various avenues available for you if you study economics. And lastly, on Indian economic service per se, the examination and the journey thereafter once you clear it. Economics, as we all know, is a science of human behavior. It is related to allocation of resources in a manner which provides maximum satisfaction to people. See the beauty. Economics is a science in the group of arts and an art in the group of sciences, thus training the reader's mind in the best of the arts and sciences to capture the essence of problems faced by society at large. So you can term it as the science of taking the best possible decision. This subject helps you to evaluate any decision by comparing it with its opportunity cost. That is the next best alternative that is foregone. So we can say the multidisciplinary attitude inculcated through the learnings from psychology, politics, sociology, history, statistics, mathematics thereby goes a long way in developing the mental faculties of the students of economics. The multidisciplinary training at graduation and post-graduation level will help you all in having an edge in the most competitive exams with much greater ease than for students from other subjects. So we can say that economics analyzes human behavior, brings in realistic decisions and situation-specific workable reactions when confronted with any issue or problem. Economics also shows how increase in the number of variables, that is, the factors explaining a phenomenon, would explain that phenomenon better, thus showing the need for a much broader outlook in any analysis. It enhances skills, approaches, and way of analyzing, processing, thinking to find out solutions to any problem. However, students should develop the concept with a cautionary note that economics being a behavioral science, there are no definitive solutions in most of the cases. Even basic concepts like indifference curve, marginal utility, etc., are all based on assumptions which have been challenged off and on. So it should not be equated like having an Aladdin's lamp or a magic wand to solve all problems. A lot of hard work goes into arriving at these conclusions. Now we move to the second part of the discussion, the various possibilities and avenues available to students of economics. As being students of economics, its detailed study would help you in attaining high level of analytical, mathematical, and statistical skill set and the ability to apply basic and integrated economic premises, principles, models to problems in business and finance. Knowing the economic context well, you can apply these to understand the logic of complicated data, to visualize the data and realize how things relate to each other, and to see the broader context of any issue at hand. Knowledge of economics helps in presenting data in a scientific and effectively designed framework supported by appropriate evidence to effectively use complex data. All these skill sets provide good career prospects both in academics and job-wise. Needless to say, modern geopolitics is dominated by economics. So it will open up lots of vistas of job opportunities, both in corporate and government, both in India and abroad. Another notable advantage, and it encompasses various aspects starting from micro to macro to agriculture economics, labor economics, health economics, environmental economics, business economics. One never gets bored with the subject. Besides, lots of avenues in economic journalism, economic research, numerous avenues in banking sector, actuarial sciences in the insurance sector, stocks and shares, besides big data analysis. Talking of big data analysis further, I would like to mention here that We are in the fourth stage of industrial revolution, or revolution 4.0, which is also known as the intelligence revolution, where emphasis is on collection of all data and our ability to use it to our advantage. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning are integral part of this fourth revolution. Artificial intelligence has a moving target. Its definition changes as its related technological advances turn out to be further developed. Machine learning is a subset and application of artificial intelligence. In 2012, machine learning, deep learning, and neural networks made great strides. In machine learning, we give machine access to data and let them learn for themselves. Artificial intelligence devices are classified into two groups: the applied artificial intelligence and the general artificial intelligence. The general one can handle any task. This generalized branch gave rise to machine learning. Why I'm telling you all this? Because being a student of economics, you'll be able to do because you've already adapt at handling big data, it would help you forge ahead in these fields with much greater ease. Now coming specifically to the Indian Economic Service, the examination, the prospects it offers, and my journey therein. Thoroughly going through the syllabus and making sure of revising. The last year's papers show knowledge of R, strata, though may not be directly asked, but the understanding of the concepts will be tested. Reading a financial newspaper, the so-called pink papers, is a must. English and general studies are also very important. Try to follow the word limit suggested. Practice of diagrams beforehand is a must. Once you clear the exam, you are posted in central ministries. Later on, maybe on deputation to state governments and autonomous bodies. Foreign deputations, secondments are also possible, like in embassies abroad. I got a chance to work with the United Nations in the war-ravaged Afghanistan for a few years too. Even developing schemes like the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Swachh Bharat Mission, Awas Yojana, MG Narega, from their policy making to implementation to evaluation to mid-course correction, all these come in during your work. Opportunities to work in finance, fiscal areas, finance commission, budget, tax policies, fiscal stability, development councils, preparation of economic survey, policy papers, numerous. The list is endless. And there are many tie-ups with foreign universities which will give you lots of international exposure. I'm sure all of you, we would look forward to join the Indian Economic Service. Also, most welcome to it. Otherwise, also wish you all the very best. And with economics as the foundation, there is no end. You will rise and do extremely well in your lives. Good wishes to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita ma'am. I would like to welcome Srikhar Nayak, Senior Economic Advisor, retired. Srikhar Nayak, sir. Hello. Hello. Okay, I think there is a connection. I think Srikhar Nayak is not. I would like to welcome Anshuman Kamila, the young and emerging economic officer of India. Anshuman Kamila ji.
Again, namaskar. Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Thank you so much for inviting me here today, and I'm really glad to be sharing the podium with eminent economists such as Nandita ma'am. Ma'am has already dealt at large with the finer nuances of the discipline that we share, and also the various opportunities and possibilities that exist if one pursues this extremely exciting field. So I think my task is made much easier in terms of what I'm supposed to speak and what extra that but it also makes it difficult for me to deliver what extra I can say about this field. So Lakshminarayan ji wanted me to speak some few words about how my journey has been. So, so I think I would like to focus on that. Is it okay if I use Odia also?
Yes, because lot of student across the different state is joining, so it will be both Hindi and English. Because Gujarat student with us, a few Gujarat student, and from Pondicherry and from Rajasthan also with us. So go ahead with either in English or in Hindi.
Okay, okay, thank you so much. So at the outset, I would like to just make the point that all my views expressed are purely my own, and it does not represent the views of any institution that I'm affiliated to, and they should not be construed as such. So with that clarification, let me just speak about some the journey that I've made. So I was schooled in Bhubaneswar in DFE Public School, Chandrasekharpur. And then for my graduation, I moved to St. Stephen's College, Delhi University for bachelor's in arts. Subsequently, I did my master's from Delhi School of Economics in economics. And then after a brief 1 year respite, I took up MPhil at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. It is during my MPhil that I was also preparing for the Indian Economic Service as well as Reserve Bank of India Grade B DEPR exam. Incidentally, I cleared the DEPR exam right during my MPhil preparation, and I was working with the RBI for a year. And it is during my training with the RBI that my results for the Indian Economic Service were announced, and I moved to Indian Economic Service. So this is briefly my journey. I should now like to speak about the 3 attempts I wrote for the Indian Economic Service. Often what happens is that when a person becomes successful, although I don't deem my success a very great one, but when success happens, people tend to overemphasize on the success, and sometimes tend to neglect or ignore that there's a lot of failure, or there's a lot of disappointment that goes on before the success actually comes your way. So I'd like to dwell upon the first 2 attempts that I wrote more. So first attempt was when I did not have any dedicated practice apart from my MS studies. Nanita ma'am rightly pointed out that you need to do a lot of studying on your own, particularly financial newspapers, and practicing diagrams, learning figures. So these are things I did not do, and predictably so I couldn't clear. I was a bit shaken, but I understood that this exam needed a lot more than just revising one's notes from MA or PA days. So first year was that way, and the second year I had good practice of questions, particularly past year questions, and also read a lot of newspapers, and got a grip on the kind of figures and facts that one needs to substantiate one's point in answers. But I could not get enough marks, so particularly the paper on Indian economy in general, that did not go well, so I could not do as well. So I couldn't clear, although I had very good marks in my interview. But in the third attempt, everything seemed to fall in place, so I could muster enough marks both in the written as well as the interview, and thankfully I was able to clear. And it was of course God's grace entirely that I got rank 1. So rank 1 does not depend at all on your own practice. Of course, a lot of it depends on clearing the exam, but rank 1 is just a matter of few marks. So that should always be kept in mind. So in the end, I should just like to summarize by summarize my preparation strategy by saying that first of all, about how to prepare, you will get enough material on YouTube. There are 2 videos of my own on YouTube, which I might like to put on the on the meeting chat right after this, after I've stopped speaking. So those are there. I think so that will broadly give you the list of resources that is required for writing this exam. Also, there are similar videos available from my other colleagues, other batchmates, and also people who have cleared the exam in previous years on the on the similar line. So you can always refer to them. Second thing is that writing practice is very essential, I think, because irrespective of how much you know, there's always a time constraint, and you need to be very sure about how much you need to write and how well you can portray them. And in writing practice, one needs to, of course, pay a great deal of attention to putting figures and diagrams, of blending them very well in the written word, because there's nothing that conveys a message as crisply that a diagram can, a well drawn diagram can. So that is important. Thirdly, time management, which flows directly from writing practice, because irrespective of how well you write 1 or 2 answers, it's very important for you to complete as many answers as possible, and if preferably all the answers if possible. So time management is of the essence. So that's why completing the questions is important. Fourth, you need to pay attention to using Indian examples or Indian data to substantiate the point you're making. So suppose there's a question on Indian agriculture and you're talking about landholding. So then you need to actually quote figures as to how landholding per capita basis has fallen over time, let's say from 2.3 in 1971 to 1.16 in 2011. These are just figures that I have recently read, but these are kind of figures that you need to commit to memory if you intend to make a good impression on whoever is evaluating the paper. And I think it makes sense, because even if you were to evaluate a paper, you would like to give more marks to a person who has quoted these figures rather than someone who's just talking off the top of their head without use of any figures as such. So also, when you're writing answers, it's always good to take figures from reputable publications. Don't say that I have read this figure in, let's say, a pamphlet that I read while coming to the exam. So always try to refer to figures from, let's say, the National Commission for Farmers or a UNDP publication or something of that sort. So that is very important. So the second last thing I wanted to dwell upon is a general advice. So I think it's always important that it's always important for you to have a plan B. So Nandita ma'am was referring to economics as being the art of the second best alternative. Often in life one does not get the second. Often in life one does not get the best. So one needs to have a second best so that one can at least be happy. And also getting the second best gives you some sort of confidence that if I've reached this far, I did not come this far to only come this far. So it's always important to have a plan B. So I would like to say that Reserve Bank of India Grade B DEPR was my plan B. So because I could not clear the Indian Economic Service, so I got through RBI Grade B, and of course it helped me a great deal in my third and last attempt, because it conveyed a very good impression about my existing skill sets and the possible value addition that I can do to my job as an Indian Economic Service officer. So having a plan B always helps. So please have a plan B. Secondly, I want to say that it's always important to practice smart work. So I have seen a lot of people who, including myself, who do a lot of hard work but do not do as well. But there are people who know how to plan their work, how to read only those things which are very important, and getting through hurdles in life very well. So always it's important to do smart work. So this of course comes with practice, and you need to adopt this strategy as efficiently as possible. I think it's important to do smart work, because if you have spent all your energy doing only economics or doing only clearing the exam, you have nothing left to enjoy your life as such. So for enjoying your life, you need to do a bit of smart work. I'm still working on it, so I can't give you any rough and ready advice to do this, but you need to somehow come around to the idea of doing smart work. And the last thing is to say that you need to pursue an extracurricular activity. When you clear the service, any service for that matter, or when you get into any career, there's always going to be some extra edge that you need to have over and above all your peers, which will give you happiness, or which will give you recognition. So I have just returned from the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, where we were sent for the foundation course, and Indian Economic Service was being represented there after 27 long years. So it was, of course, a very fortunate thing for us to be attending the foundation course there. And I realized that after having cleared the civil services or the Indian Economic Service exams, which are one of the toughest in terms of rigor and what it takes to clear these exams, there are so many people displaying so varied levels and varieties of extracurricular activity: photography, dance, song, drawing, and so many other things. I mean, there are some things which I didn't hear of, which I didn't think or imagine that these things would exist. But they have known this art, they have perfected this art, and that's what makes the entire ecosystem rich and more vibrant. So always try to pick up something that's around you or which you think that gives you pleasure, and try to pursue it to a certain degree of fineness and perfection. So always have an extracurricular activity. Lastly, I would just like to say that for people from Odisha in particular, there's been a lot of syllabus revision in terms of economics teaching in Odisha, and with that, really, it has been pegged a level that is that helps you to write the Indian Economic Service exam. So if you follow that very religiously and rigorously, you will be very well placed with regard to clearing the exam. So with these concluding remarks, I finish my intervention. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for your patience in listening to me.
Thank you, Anshumanji. And I would like to invite Srikar Naik, former Senior Economic Advisor to Ministry of I think he was lastly retired in Niti Aayog. So I would like to invite Srikar Naik, sir.
Thank you very much. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody, particularly Mr. Bakshi. Now, I begin with saying I'm an old timer. I'm an old timer. If you consider 1991 is the bifurcating line, then I belong to the 1984 batch of Indian Economic Service. And so whatever I say will be my experience of getting into the service only. So as I said, I'm an old timer. Meanwhile, 36 years have passed, and a lot of developments have taken place in the areas of economics, theories, thought, development approach in all areas of economics. And with such development, definitely the courses of economics have also increased manifold. Now, to begin with, I did my master from Revansa College, Cuttack. Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
hello,
yes,
Mr. Bakshi.
Audible, sir.
Audible, sir. Yes, I did my master from Revansa College, Cuttack. And then after 6 months of doing that, I joined as a lecturer in DAV College, Koraput, which later on became a government college also. So whatever knowledge I had acquired as a student of economics in the college days or during my master degree, it offered me a lot of scope to perfect my rather clarity in the knowledge about economics that helped me a lot in getting into the service actually and clearing the examination. So Nandita and Camilla, both of them have very aptly share their ideas about the subject and ways in which the present days aspirants can get into the service. So I will just say my thought. I will say, like the title of this webinar, Mobi Samartha. Yes, I can do it approach. The candidates must have to carry on the approach. Yes, I can do it. You have to. So with this approach, there are three sub approaches which are required and very important components of this I can do it approach. You have to. These are dedication, determination, and right kind of preparation. These three, yes, specifically all these things have been in their narratives. I mean, in explanation, both Mr. Kapila and Nandita, they have explained it. So you have to be very confident and just get into the idea of getting into the service, say by carrying the idea that yes, I can do it. Then you must dedicate yourself to the task. Then you also be determined to cross the hurdle. Hurdle means some areas, some papers of economics may not be very interesting to you, and some paper may be interesting to you. So you cannot just afford to ignore those papers which are not interesting to you. So you have to be determined that I can do it. Then the most important thing while writing the examination, you have to make the right kind of presentation. You must see that when you are presenting your replies to the questions, like Nandita has said, word limits, or I think Kapila also touched that point. So because you are a student of economics, we sometimes tend to believe that we know much more than others know. So though we can keep on touching each and every aspect, but by the time the word limits are gone, and the answer becomes unduly very large, and then for the evaluator it becomes less interesting. Write the answer in such a way that when the evaluator reads a particular sentence, he will immediately like to go forward to the next sentence, then third sentence, till the end. Then he will end like it is a surprise, and he will stop for a minute, I mean, few seconds, and just, I mean, give you the marks. That kind of approach you should always carry. So then whatever you read for preparing the examination, Kapila has said it, must be very clear what you have read. So halfway approach may not do justice to your task. Like I have said, whatever little drawbacks as a student I had, I mean, being a lecturer, I taught there actually for about 4 years. Before I joined the service, that gave me a lot of, because I had to cover almost all the papers. There were limited number of lecturers, so I had to cover all the papers in taking classes. So starting with economic development, macroeconomics, some parts of macroeconomics also, then monetary economics, then finance, public finance, then Indian economics. Yes, Indian economics, Kapila has rightly said. Maybe during student times, I did not have scope for getting into the figures and facts. But as a lecturer, I could not have avoided it. I mean, I felt that my classes were very interesting when I was quoting figures and students were listening very aptly, and that helped me a lot in the examination also. So these are the things in very nutshell I thought I should share with you. So there are a lot of participants, very interesting, I think, young boys and girls. So prepare yourself with dedication, determination, and right kind of preparation. Just half-hearted will not do, or and preparing in wilderness also will not do, and boasting as a student of economics and just thinking that you know everything will also not do, because even if you know everything, I mean, when it comes to presentation in writing, you have to be, it has to be a very right kind of presentation. It has to be a very right kind of presentation. And yes, facts and figures. And then remember, as far as Indian economics is concerned, and even development approach is also concerned, I mean, a lot of things have happened in economic science. And take the example of India, 1991. Now, since 1918, we have no more this planning system. Planning system has been abandoned. But you have also got a paper, Indian Development Planning, History of Indian Development Planning. You have to know that also and know this also. We were students of controlled economics, regulated economics. Now you are students of what is that, free economics in India. So you have to have a right kind of blending in your acquiring knowledge. That will help you definitely a lot. I mean, how it is different from what was before, and how it is more advantageous or otherwise from the previous one. And yes, right. Then when you compare this, definitely you have to get into the area of facts and figures also. Then only you can make your point convincing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Srikar Naik sir. I would invite Akshay Kumar Panda sir to deliver his experience and vision for economics, particularly for the young mind of India.
Okay, you are not audible.
You're not audible, sir.
Yeah.
Audible. Okay. Yes.
Good
Yes.
evening, everybody.
Yes.
Good evening, young friends. I am to introduce myself as a student of economics. I have been a student of economics since 1978. I'm still a student of economics because I still work on economics and economic issues. Nandita has very nicely elaborated the opportunities, the effort, and the work one has to do to become an economist, and more specifically to join Indian Economic Service. Ansuman, the youngest of all in this group, apart from you students, has very nicely projected what an all-rounder should do and what it means to be all-rounder. Apart from being an all-rounder, in Ansuman, I find he's a very nice boy. He's a very humble, very respectful, a very nice boy. That attribute all the children should emulate. Apart from seeing his video, you must see him in person to take his advice, how to get appreciation as a good boy. So now let us move to the study of economics, what economics is and how useful this economics is, and this usefulness is for the society as well as for yourself. I'm bringing society first because all of us draw our sustenance from the society. If we allow the society to grow, you will all grow. So apart from this, it helps in building a good society. It helps building yourself. So now what is economics? Everybody has said all these things. I'll just create a nuanced approach to that. Economics is the science of choice. All of you know what is a choice. You know, you prefer to study or you go to a theater. You prefer to work in one place or you prefer to work in another place. It is all choice. And as Ansuman and Nandita has both emphasized, one exercise the choice for the best, and if not, for the second best. So you will always evaluate what is best for you and how to work for the best. And in your society, in the work sphere, you will always work in a direction to find out what is the best that you can achieve for the society, in the workplace, in your job outcome. Don't forget that you have to look at the outcome of your effort. If you put in 8 hours of work, you must get result of 8 hours of work. Now, coming into some details about the economics, Nandita has said it is both a science as well as an art. I agree with that. It is a science because you have to prove many things and you have to use statistics to come to a reasonable conclusion of what you see in the events in the data around you. And with the help of statistics, you would be able to reach that stage of scientific conclusion. Though it is not perfect, but we call it reasonably acceptable proposition. So the challenges in the society today, I'm not talking about the country, I'm bringing in the entire world. Say, for example, COVID-19. COVID-19, whether this closure of the workplace was really a desirable thing, whether there was no other alternative for that, and if there are other alternatives, what are those alternatives? You might have heard about life and livelihood. So it is a great choice. All the time in our life, all the time when you work, whether in the private sector or in the government or in the civil society, you will be confronting this choice to straight up whether I should do this, whether I should do that. And how do you decide? Just like that, you will not decide on basis of whims and fancies, on the basis of your likes and dislikes. You look at what is the empirical evidence. When I say empirical evidence, it is looking at the data, the behavior of data, how things are moving, how the students are choosing careers. So that is the data. Students are choosing their career on the basis of the certainty of getting a job and how rewarding that job. So I'm just giving that example to say you what is empirical evidence. And when Nandita said about it is an art, it is really an art. By looking directly, you just look at the data and reach some conclusion. It doesn't give you any answer. And that is what when you read statistics, that is called spurious correlation. You just put two things together for a period of time. You just put two events and their quantity. Over a period of time, you will get some relationship. That is called spurious. So what when Nandita said it is an art. When Nandita said it is an art, it is really an art because in your intuitive mind, you look at what is really the relationship between two events, then you test it. So unless you know the subject, unless you know how the events, how the facts, they interact with each other, you will not be able to assimilate the data to test whether that is correct. So it is so basically when I say so, it involves a lot of critical thinking, a lot of analytical ability, and when you do all these things, it constantly widens your horizon. And as a student of economics, suppose again Nandita has brought in interdisciplinary work. In a workplace, you will find there are several people who come from different disciplines. It is only the student of economics who signs out in the workplace, provided the economic student has really studied economics. He signs because he has got a brilliant capacity to analyze, brilliant capacity to put together facts, which other disciplines, students of other disciplines fail to do because their mind is unidirectional mostly. As a student of economics, your mind constantly expands in different directions. You might have heard about 360 degree. And now the question, again Nandita has brought in Industry 4.0, where technology is playing a great role. When technology is playing a great role, the question arises, which industry, whether the industry will be able to adapt the technology, it is a question of choice. So now I'm leaving the subject here I'm going about the career options. Mostly my colleagues Nandita, Onsuman, and Nayak Saab, they have mentioned about opportunities in the Indian economic service. I want to go beyond that. I would prefer any student of economics should become a researcher. Of course, research options in India is very limited. Research is not rewarding and research is not respected. But to be a real professional economist, you must pursue a research, aspire to do a research outside the country. There are some centers in India where there is good research being done. One is Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Studies in Mumbai. And another place, another good place to study and do research is Central University of Hyderabad. I don't know what they are doing today, but for pretty long time, students of Central University of Hyderabad were doing much better as far as becoming researcher economics. In fact, to tell you, the current vice chancellors of Bangalore School of Economics is a young boy who passed out from Central University of Hyderabad, who happens to be the secretary of Indian Econometric Society. So now, question is, if you want to pursue research as the first best option, then you must, along with economics, you must have a thorough understanding of mathematics. I know most of the undergraduate students and colleges, they made it compulsory to have mathematics as a subject in economics, but I would emphasize that you must understand mathematics. Without understanding mathematics, you'll not be able to do a thorough work as an economist. Second, I would advise all my young friends to have a feel of the data while studying now. If you have a feel of the data, you'll imbibe that attitude throughout your life. The next time when you were subjected to a test, you will not have to search for the data. The crucial data, at a crucial point of time, you'll be able to understand and it remains in your mind. Not all data you have to look at. Events, first find out the events which are critical. Just as Nayak Saab has said, in 1991, it is a watershed time in Indian economy. And most of the things you must know what is that in 1991. And if you find that there are certain critical events that happened in 1991, then you must know those figures. What was those figures? And then look at the trend. You don't have to see all the figures for all the years. Just imagine that this is the trend. There is a tendency whether this critical figure is rising or falling or fluctuating, or there are no pattern at all. That makes your presentation before any audience in an ex-tempo system very easier. You don't have to be afraid whether I'll be wrong or right. Or you may also say that this is around this figure, and this figure has moved to this figure around a radius. So that critical aptitude for reading, for looking at figure and assimilating those figures in your mind, collating those figures in your work is very essential. And I think the last thing I would suggest is that you have talked about opportunities in the government. We have talked about lecturers in government colleges and university. We have talked about researchers, and the most important area, expanding opportunities, think tanks. Now, many private think tanks, they are coming. And there are consulting groups who are doing independent research. Then there are groups, all the banks have got economic cell, all big corporates have got economic cell, all well-placed civil society group, all of you know, NGOs, non-governmental NGOs, You don't look at the non-governmental NGOs in your neighborhood who does some project on behalf of the government. There are international NGOs who hire economists. Then there is opportunities in the World Bank, UN system, opportunities in IMF. But let me tell you, most of the opportunities for economists in the World Bank, IMF, or the UN, they have their education from abroad. We don't come across opportunities being advertised by World Bank for advertising their vacancies. It is somehow the vacancies are filled up over there itself. There is wide opportunities for economists. There is pride of being an economist. There is pride of being a student of economics. And you people who prefer to be an economist should be prepared for lifelong learning if you want to stay relevant in the system. If you don't have to cut a sorry figure among your colleagues, because people expect from you a lot more than from others, because they know that he is a student of history. We don't expect. But when they know here is a person among us, a student of economics, people expect. So what are some attributes of a student of economics? He or she should have discipline. He or she should have determination. And the child should have the ability to express correctly. There are two ways of expressing. One is expressing through our language, and the other is expressing through mathematical symbols. So you must have proper competence in writing your English as well as understanding your mathematics, and do hard work, prepare for regular work throughout your life. You become a successful economist, and there are ample opportunities in the world for economists. There are no unemployment among economists. You will never find unemployment among economists. So I think I've spoken enough, and there are other things to say, but it will be prolonging because the subject is such, it is very vast. So there is no end to it. So we'll invite questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you all. Best wishes.
Thank you, Panda sir. Almost all number of questions is already in the chat box. One student from I'm Vigneshwar, currently pursuing my master in economics in Ravenshaw University, Cuttack. I just want to say that when we want to publish a paper in economics, we need a sufficient knowledge in mathematics, economic and econometrics and statistics. So for IAS exam, how much we need mathematics, statistics, and econometrics? Another question. Another question, or just one to two question commonly will take it. We are studying many microeconomics theory with lot of unacceptable assumption. Then to what extent these theories are useful for the decision making as an IAS? Okay, please, sir.
Anshuman will answer the first question.
Yes, Anshuman ji Anshuman is, I think.
Yes, first of all, I would like to very deeply and graciously thank Khipanda sir for being so solicitous in his praise of mine. I do not know how much of it I deserve, but I definitely will strive to come up to his expectations of me. In fact, I have been taking note of the questions that have been coming up in the chat box, and I would like to go through them as much I have covered. So first, there was one question regarding applying for the IES exam after having completed their PhD. Of course, there is no problem as such. The minimum qualification for writing the IES exam is a master's. So anyone after the master's can apply for the exam. So as long as age permits, and as long as you are willing to study a broad swathe of subjects rather than specializing in any one particular sub-theme, which we usually do in PhD. So you are most welcome to write the exam. And in fact, the kind of skill set that a PhD would bring, the kind of a very nuanced understanding of a subject that a PhD would bring to the service would be of immense value. So there's no problem as such. Second, there was a question on what are the aspects that the examiner is seeing in a candidate in the IES exam. So let me bifurcate this question into two parts. So I would like to answer first about what are the aspects that are seen in the written exam. So in the written exam, first they'll expect you to be crisp and brief. So if there's a question on, let's say, one microeconomic theory, let's say monopolistic competition, don't go talking about pure competition or perfect competition and then come to monopoly and then come to monopolistic competition. First, you would have wasted a lot of time. Second, you would have run out of the word limit. So don't do that. Purely, you have to come directly, cut straight to the chase. There's no need to waste time on irrelevant stuff. So they expect you to be crisp and brief. Any point you are trying to make, please make it with the example from India as far as possible, India-centric examples. Then when you talk of data or figures, please quote data or figures as liberally as possible, as much as your memory can allow. Please absorb them and use them in the answers. That always gives a good lasting impression, because that will convey that this person is not only aware or has not only heard about what are the problems, but actually has read about these problems and remembers some figures about these problems. So this is what they would expect in the written exam. The second part, I think, would be the interview. So interview is about applying what you have read in the newspapers or applying what you have read in the textbooks to the world around you. So for example, in my interview, they asked me cite an example of FDI in this room. So I was really baffled that, you have read everything about FDI, greenfield, brownfield, what are the limits, FDI versus, foreign direct investment versus foreign institutional investment, everything. But how can you think of an FDI example within the interview room? And then one of the panelists pointed out to me that the shoes you're wearing, it seems to me that they're an FDI. But then you need to get back saying that, no, sir, this is made in India FDI. So this is made in India shoes. So that kind of examples they will be. So quick-wittedness and the presence of mind in tackling any answer, that is the kind of approach they would be expecting. And of course, so once you are in the Indian Economic Service interview, you are being screened not only for your economics knowledge, but also your aptitude to become an officer. So then they'll be posing questions or problems relating to India, and you should be giving some answers that are administratively possible and feasible. So always keep that in the mind when you're appearing for the interview. So interview would involve certain degree of aptitude over and above the aptitude that you have for the written exam. Then there was a question about the UPSC Civil Services exam and IES exam, whether both these exams require a blend of many subjects to be read. UPSC Civil Services pattern and IES pattern is a lot different. IES exam has 2 papers on general English and general studies, but these papers constitute a very small proportion of the entire pool of marks in the exam. You will have to get good marks in it, but as far as my experience says, and also the experience of others, you do not expect to get an edge in the exam purely on the basis of these papers. So you do not have to know everything, but you need to know as much as everybody else knows. So just keep that much in mind, and I think that should put you in good stead. Secondly, this question that even Shri Lakshminarayan ji was reading out, what is the level of mathematics, statistics and econometrics that is required? With regard to mathematics and statistics, I should say that the bachelor's level of Delhi University, which also corresponds to what we have done in Odisha now, would be sufficient. For econometrics, I should say that lately they have been asking a lot of tedious questions in econometrics, particularly time series and violations of CLRM assumptions. So certain questions that they have been asking, they have been tough nut to crack. Personally, I have been very scared of econometrics questions that they have asked in the Indian Economic Service exam. I think econometrics is such a vast subject in itself that it is very difficult to be aware of all the things that you should know, or all the things that the Indian Economic Service exams expects you to know. So as much as you know, please revise them well, and hopefully you'll be able to crack the questions that are asked. Last question that was about the last question was about how to use microeconomics and the models of microeconomics and with untenable assumptions in the making of an IAS officer. I think all models that we study in economics are abstract ideas which somehow tend to give a benchmark against which we compare reality. So it would not be wise to say that I'll be explaining this phenomenon by using a textbook model. So that needs to be kept in mind. But to cite a very pure example, I think this question about whether to give people discounts on something that you would want them to consume, this classic debate about whether you want to give them food stamps or do you want to give them extra income and in order to in order to enable them to reach a particular level of utility. I think that is an important thing that is usually, it can be very easily applied in the work of an Indian Economic Service officer. So when you're trying to give people a certain degree of utility and you are functioning with the kind of fiscal rectitude that the government is expected to follow, I think this knowledge that you have read in microeconomics is of immense value. So I think this is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from Sambalpur University?
No, I'll add what Anshuman has said. Somebody has asked about those assumptions, how relevant those assumptions, and whether it is at all useful. Anshuman has also addressed to some extent, but I'll add that. In fact, the traditional economics, there are many assumptions, and economics deals with human beings and human behavior. Each human behavior is very distinct from the other. We aggregate to the society, and unless we apply very simplified solution, simplified approach with those complex issues, will not be at that point of time. It was not easier to analyze the issues. So that is the reason why simpler assumptions were taken and the complex problem was reduced to a simpler problem, so that with the economics tools that was available at that moment of time, it was easier to reach certain conclusions which are not definitive. When Nandita has said it is an art, actually it was an art at that moment of time to reach conclusions from simplified assumptions. But over the period of time, all those assumptions have been relaxed, and with mathematics now available and software program that is increasingly being used, and the methods called non-linear programming, where those simplified assumptions are not required, it is possible to do economic analysis with very little assumptions. That is another approach in econometrics that is called, without looking at assumptions, you just look at the data and see how the data behaves. The third approach, and that is recently came into news a few months back, there is an experimental approach. The experimental approach adopted by certain economists in Harvard, led by Mr. Abhijit Banerjee and his wife, who recently got their Nobel Prize in economics. They have used experimental approach to study what exactly in a particular situation help in reducing poverty. This is a purely scientific approach, doesn't require, just look at the data, look at the people who are giving that data, analyze the data in a very sophisticated way and reach a conclusion. So and to that extent, economics has become more of a science, a definitive science. Nevertheless, art element is always there in all sciences. So these assumptions are gradually being relaxed, and people are directly working on the data and the economic theorizing to reach conclusions. That's it.
I will also add. It's like this. I mean, if somebody may rightly ask example also. You see, survey research. we always do not go for, when we go for data collection, we go for sampling. It is assumption is also, although it is gradually relaxed, it is also very much tightly linked to our study and of course, development planning, like data collection and sampling, and on the basis of sampling, we just collect data, then analyze the data and we generalize it. And that is how the government also takes decision on the basis of the data collected through sampling. Sampling, that means that the data collected and the findings that we get through sampling and data collection, and that will be applicable to the general masses, whatever the field is, maybe agriculture development or poverty reduction or any other area like. So this assumption, although it is gradually relaxed, it will remain tight linked with our approaches in working towards development. You may go for the next question. I was asking about, are you listening? Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, sir.
Somebody,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Somebody was asking about the problem of poverty in Odisha. Yes, like Akha has already said, it is again, it will be a great area of research in Odisha case. And poverty, of course, people have in some way these days, they have started interpreting it like this, poverty is a relative thing. I share my experience long back when I was working in Ministry of Rural Development. And at that time, my district was popularly known as a hunger district, although once upon a time it was known as the rice bowl of Orissa, also Kalahandi district. I'm talking about Kalahandi district. A very senior officer who happened to be from Orissa cadre itself, he asked me, what is the reason, what is the problem with the district? I just replied to him, at that time, context at that time, keeping in view the context at that time, I said, sir, give us water and let us live alone. At that time, the emphasis was more on agriculture development. Meanwhile, things have started changing. Now the approach is industrialization, urbanization, then service sector development. So yes, to be specific to that question, the reasons for poverty in Orissa. In Orissa, we have been lagging behind in all these areas. Although we are very minerally rich, our even blue economics also is very sound, but we have not been able to exploit those, and we have not been able to industrialize our state. What is that compared with the availability of minerals in our state? So, and agriculture development also, we are very, very poor, and greater part of Orissa is based on this cereal production only. Its emphasis is on cereal production only. Again, another senior officer was saying the reason for poverty in, see, paddy rightly should take 3 to 4 months. But like sugar cane, there was a time where sowing seed, paddy seed, or doing plantation and waiting for 8-9 months for harvesting the crop. By which time in other parts of the country they were harvesting at least 2-3 crops. Like after paddy, they will go for winter crop, then again for vegetable. So that is how to that extent the area gets affected. Your land is the only source of survival, and you are doing growing only one crop and just relaxing for the entire year. So there are many areas, and yes, it will always require a good research. There are many researchers, economic researchers in Orissa, they are doing it. Every time people are suggesting, coming with new findings and suggestions. And yes, today there would be one recommendation relevant, tomorrow it will be another recommendation relevant. Things are changing. So let us hope that this will not last long.
Lakshminarayan-ji, you are muted.
Yes, any question? Sambalpur University, student from Sambalpur University, Central University of Odisha, Pondicherry, or will wind up the session? It is already 8:15. Any more question? Or sir, can you wind up the session? I think time is already over. 15 minutes past, sir.
This was one hour session, no?
Yes, sir. Concluding remark of Nandita ma'am.
Ma'am, you're on mute.
Madam.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to wish all the students who have joined this session with how much sincerity you have shown in joining. Apply all that to study. Keep your eyes and ears open, and I'm sure the world is waiting for you. Go ahead. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Nandita ma'am, Anshuman ji, and Srikar Naik sir, and Ake Pandey sir. We'll meet again in a different episode in coming 3 to 4 months again.
Thank you, Lakshmi,
Yes.
for inviting us. Thank you everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
ये अंशुमान को मैं आगे केवे congratulate करनो थी ताकि I had not seen also face to face. Great Anshuman, you have been doing very well, and you have made us proud also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.